Name the number one thing that you think keeps Christians poor. I'll ask you again. Take a few minutes. Name the number one thing that you think keeps Christians poor or performing under their fullest potential. Take a minute, think about it. If you have paper, write it down. Okay. Secondly, my next question is, what do you think keeps you from performing at your highest potential? Take a moment and think about that. What do you think is keeping you from performing at your highest potential? Today, we're going to talk about one thing that I have noticed, which is Christians typically have a tendency to over spiritualize the law of success. And that's what we're going to unpack today. And that's what we're talking about. So, for those of you who have never been here before, my name is Shalomith, and I would like to welcome you to another Detour to Destiny Sunday School. So let's get right into it. There are certain things, certain principles, beliefs that are commonly accepted that keep Christians poor. And today I want to talk about, unpack one that is very prevalent, which is the tendency to over spiritualize the law of success. Here's the thing, there are certain laws that apply to everyone, whether you believe them or not, whether you believe in God or not, whether or not you're Christian or not Christian. There are certain laws and principles that apply to everyone. I always like to give the example of the law of gravity. Whether you believe in the law of gravity or not, whether you believe in God or not, the law of gravity applies to you. The reason you walk around and you're not floating through space is because the law of gravity applies, whether you believe it or not. If you drop something, it's going to fall, crash to the ground because the law of gravity, it is what it is, and it has nothing to do with what you believe. So is the law of success. The law of success, the principles that we must follow in order to be successful are the same across the board. And a lot of times Christians get a little upset or they get bewildered and they wonder why certain people succeed or why it seems evil succeeds or why it seems as if plots or businesses or endeavors that are not in the best interest of humankind as a collective. A lot of times we sit and wonder, how did this business succeed? How did this evil um, thing succeed or move forward? And it's because the laws of success, the principles of success, they work no matter what. And you need to know them. So, what I want to do is I want to go over common Christian beliefs, cliche statements, commonly embraced mindsets throughout the Christian community that too often keeps us stuck, that keeps us operating under our full potential, while the rest of the world is taking off and being successful and not hindered by these things that have become a cultural norm within the Christian society. So I just want to get right into it. The first belief, one thing that we say that we apply the wrong way is, it's not by my might, but by God's might. It's not by my strength, but by God's. Of course, we have to talk about how this is applied out of context and how it's supposed to be applied. A lot of times when we hear, we're talking to stay within context of what we're talking about success. A lot of times when we hear not by my might, but by his, we are hearing it applied to pacify laziness. A lot of times that phrase is used to pacify lack of action or lack of persistence. A lot of times when persistence gets hard or consistency gets hard, or the road from here to what you are working on gets more difficult than what you anticipate, a lot of times we will sit down and we will not measure up, we will not do what it takes, and we'll just kind of pacify ourselves and we'll say, well, it's not by my might, it's by God's. So I tried and it didn't work, so I'm just going to sit back and see what God does. It's not by my might but by God's. This is not the way that principle is supposed to be applied, right? So that principle is a principle to apply while you are in action. So that principle steps in when you reach the end of what you are capable of, because God made us all capable of action. He made us all capable of doing things to cause change in our lives. Once you reach your wits end, your strengths end, that's when you can say it's not by my might, but by God's. As you are working, it is a mindset to keep you humble so that you know, even though God has given you the ability and the ingenuity to do things, it's not by your might that you can act, but it's God who has graced you to be able to take action. But action is the key word, meaning that that is not permission to not do anything. That is not a green pass to not take action. Not by my might, but by God's is a mindset to keep you humble while you are indeed taking action. Because to apply that mindset to pacify yourself, to feel comfortable with not taking action, with not doing everything that God has made you capable of, is a surefire way to keep you in poverty. It's a surefire way to keep you at a place where you are performing beneath your full potential. Another mindset that I want to really hone in on is a lot of times this is something that people tell us. A lot of times, if you are a person who, if you're ambitious, if you have a lot of get up and go, if you are a person who you are doing the work, sometimes you get frustrated. Sometimes when things are not panning out the way you want them to, it can be frustrating and it can be overwhelming. And sometimes you get stressed out trying to figure out how to make the business work, how to make the idea work. Sometimes you can't figure out why you follow the marketing plan, the business plan, the strategy, the way, gurus or best practices say it should work and it's not working, and you get frustrated. And a lot of times you express that frustration to your friends and those who surround you and family members. A lot of times their reply is this, which is, you're depending too much on you. I'll say that statement again. A lot of times, ambitious people are met with the statement, you are depending too much on you. You need to let go and let God. You need to stop trying to force it. You need to stop trying to force it and make it happen. You're depending too much on you. I will tell you why this is a dangerous, deadly statement to progress. A lot of times, that statement is said in a way to suggest that you should stop, pray, and then just kind of listen for what God is telling you to do next. The key word here is stop. It's always appropriate to pray. It's always appropriate to hear what God is telling you to do next. But a lot of times, the way that advice is given within the Christian community is under the perception or the idea that you're trying too hard, you're trying to force it, and because you're trying to force it, you should just stop action. Because you're trying to force it, you should just stop until you hear what else you're supposed to do next. The issue with this is that that is not the proper way to apply that advice, right? So if you're depending too much on you, that makes sense if, let's say, for example, if you're trying to open a bakery, right? And you're trying to open a bakery and you're following the business plan, you're following the plan to get the teams in place, to buy the equipment, to search for the location, and you're doing everything. But for whatever reason, let's just say you can't get approval for the loan. I'm just making up a scenario, and you're frustrated because the credit score is good, you have good business credit, and you don't know why you can't get approved for the loan. You talk to your community, your support system, and you're frustrated trying to figure it out. And their answer is, you're depending too much on you. You're depending too much on you. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. Now, what is helpful is to say, hey, you still need to go through the process of maybe have a conversation with the bank and find out why the loan isn't being approved. Maybe you need to talk to other financial advisors. Maybe you need to talk to other financial mentors who have successfully gotten a loan approved. Maybe you need to reach out to paid help. It may not be someone that you know directly in your circle, but maybe there's someone you can reach out to who offers that type of support or that type of mentorship. That's the type of advice that needs to be met, opposed to someone just saying you're depending too much on you and you're just supposed to dead stop and not take action anymore. I will reiterate, yes, you always pray. Yes, you always ask God, what step should I take next? Yes, you always are in a position where you're listening, but you also need to always be working and moving forward. To push or to force something would be, I would say more so, let's say, for example, if you're applying for the loan, and let's just say you go to US Bank, and US Bank is constantly saying, no, 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 no. Maybe try another bank, or maybe try another venue, or maybe try another funding source, or maybe try crowdfunding, or maybe try, presenting to independent investors, or maybe try a smaller scale. My issue is that when the response is you're depending too much on you without any other course of action, a lot of Christians stop short. They don't explore everything else. So a lot of times what will happen with Christians is Christians will apply for a loan from a bank or institution. They will, for example, come up against opposition, talk about it to their friends. Their peers will say you're depending too much on you without giving any other further advice. And then you stop, and now you're in this holding pattern of praying and waiting for a supernatural answer. That's not the way you do it. You pray, you wait for an answer, you listen to God, but you also continue to seek options. You continue to go beyond what you've tried. Because when you over spiritualize it, you don't even go to the other options. You're not even thinking about private crowdfunding. You're not thinking about going to private investors. You're not thinking about maybe picking up a second job and starting smaller. You're not thinking about how can I start on a micro scale and then grow the business. All the thought process, all of that brainstorming that happens beyond the opposition, a lot of times for Christians, does not happen when you're met with you're depending too much on you, let go and let God. And then that's the end of the business advice. That is why so many Christians stay poor. So, to reiterate this, because I know this is a trigger for some people, I am not saying that you are not supposed to pray. I am not saying that you don't seek God for guidance. What I am saying is make sure you are exhausting all possibilities while you pray. And for those who give people the advice, you're depending too much on you, do not give that advice in a way that causes a person to stop exploring all the other possibilities and to over spiritualize it and get into a holding pattern where they're just praying and waiting and not taking action. That is a very, very dangerous place to be in. And a lot of times that advice stops Christians dead in their tracks. And then before you know it, you look up, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, it's been 3 years since you started something. And because it didn't work out and because you didn't get the proper wisdom and business advice on how to continue moving, you become guilty and feel as if you're being too arrogant or as if you're depending too much on your own might or your own strength or your own ability. That starts to set in. It's a limiting belief. And now you're not doing what's necessary to take the actions to get beyond the obstacle because you think I'm depending too much on me. Let that go. The way you not depend too much on you is you do what you can do, and then you see what type of response you get. You ask God for wisdom and how to process the response you get, and then you move on to trying another way. Do not stop short of what you are trying to achieve under the misunderstanding that perseverance and consistency is depending too much on you. Perseverance and consistency and being diligent is not depending too much on you. Perseverance and diligence is exercising the discipline that God has built inside of you. God wants you to keep going. Does God want you to burn yourself out? No, of course not. That's common sense. Does God want you to work out of balance? No, of course not. Does God want you to get so stressed out that you're losing hair and losing sleep? Of course not. That's when I would say you're depending too much on you, right? But not because you keep going, not because you keep trying, not because you keep trying other avenues. That's what you're supposed to do. And the world does not have, those who are not Christian don't operate under this principle. They're on the other side of the spectrum, right? Where they people who don't believe in God, people who believe it's all me, 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 a lot of times they will still succeed even at their own detriment because that principle is not hindering them. I'm not saying that what they're believing is right, but what I'm saying is what they believe does put them on the right side of the success principle, which is to keep going. Right. So you having the knowledge and the wisdom of who God is, you don't want to operate from a place of believing it's just all you, because that's where the arrogance seeps in. And you always need to be mindful of the fact that God is the reason that you can. Right. But you still got to keep going. You still got to keep trying. You still got to keep turning the leaf. Pray and go, pray and go, pray and try. You keep trying until you get there. Keep trying until you get there. And that is not something to feel guilty about. That is not a display of arrogance. That is a display of discipline. And God smiles upon your discipline. But do it without worrying. Do it without fret. Do it in balance. Do it with prayer. But do it. The other thing, uh, John, I wanted to bring this out. John chapter 9 talks about this. So if you go to John chapter 9, and it is verses 4 through 5, Jesus says, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night comes when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. God is saying, Jesus was saying, I have to work while I can. You need to work while you can. You need to work while it's day. In other words, while you have the strength, while you have the time, while you have the grace to do it. Because when night comes, there's no work to be done. And as long as you are here, and I'm talking to Christians, so I'm talking about your purpose. I'm talking about the work God created you to do. I'm talking about your purpose. So you need to work while it is day, while you have the strength, while you have the ability, while you have the grace, while you have this open window. Do what you can, because when the time is up, when the strength is gone, you never know when you may not be able to. You can't work then. So it's not about you depending too much on you. Keep going. The other one, the other Christian cliche or the other Christian belief that is applied out of context in the wrong way is to wait on the Lord, to pray and wait on the Lord. This again is taken out of context when people apply this when they are passively waiting for a big breakthrough. A lot of times Christians have this big breakthrough mentality. And it's like, I'm waiting on the Lord. I'm waiting on my breakthrough. I'm waiting on my miracle. I'm waiting on my season of Jubilee. I'm waiting on this opportunity to happen. I'm waiting for this big door to open. Passively waiting. Praying and passively waiting is a ticket to poverty. Praying and not taking action. Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. You have waiting on the Lord is waiting while you are doing. Waiting on the Lord, resting in the Lord doesn't mean that you're resting and taking the day off and sitting in the bed all day. That's not the type of rest the scripture is talking about. Resting and waiting on the Lord is not, just kind of chilling out and taking it easy breezy and every day is a spa day or every day is a relaxation day. That's not the type of waiting that the scripture is talking about. You can't be in a perpetual state of praying without action, right? You have to apply action to the word. Don't take my word for it. Let's read Psalm 27. Psalm 27 says this. Psalm 27 says, let me get there. It says, Psalms 27, verse 13 says, I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. I say, wait on the Lord. If the verse is saying I would have fainted unless I had believed in the goodness of God, That's a lot of work going on. That's not a passive waiting. A person who's telling you, I would have fainted if I didn't believe, is a person who is aggressively pursuing a work, a call. You're not going to be at a point where you would have fainted if you're passively waiting. If you're at the point where you're saying, I would have fainted unless I had believed, that means that you're working towards, you're taking action. Wait on the Lord and be of good courage. He will strengthen your heart. The reason you need strength is because you're taking action. So that's not a passive wait. That is a wait where it's like, I'm doing the work and I'm waiting for the outcome. I'm building a business, I'm building a nonprofit, I'm doing the work, I'm doing the nonprofit work, I'm doing whatever it is God put on my heart to do, but I'm doing it with patience, meaning I'm not trying to rush the outcome. I'm not trying to rush how fast I get to the other side. I'm not getting discouraged as I wait for the outcome I'm working towards. So I'm waiting with a heart of optimism as I work. I'm waiting to get to the end. I'm waiting to get to the end desired result as I work towards that result. So if it's a 3-month process and I'm working the entire 3 months, I am waiting for the end of that 3 months as I work throughout the 3 months. If it's a 3-year process, I am patiently waiting and being strengthened by God as I work out this 3-year business plan. It's an active state. It does not mean that you sit there and you pray and then you go to sleep, or you pray and then you're not taking action. You have to add action to the wait. It's an active state of being. And one of the reasons that this saying that we say to each other out of context, be patient and wait on the Lord, when we apply that out of context and we're not taking action, that's in violation of the law of success. The law of success is faith without works is dead. The law of success is you have to be consistent and you have to be persistent and you have to be diligent. That's the law of success. And it applies, like I said, whether you're Christian or not. And one of the reasons that you see people who don't believe in God, or people who may not necessarily, in your eyes, right, be doing the things the right way, and you're wondering why they're still succeeding, that's like wondering why they don't float away, because the law of gravity applies to them and you. To look at someone who's applying the law of success and wonder why they're succeeding, because they're not, in your eyes, godly enough or doing the right thing, that's the same as looking at them and wondering why when they drop something it falls. Because it's a law, because it's going to apply no matter what, right? There's certain things that you have to do. Psalm 37:7 says this. Psalm 37:7 says, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked devices to pass. Right? So it's saying, wait patiently on the Lord. And like I was just talking about, a lot of you guys are looking around wondering, like, well, they're crooked. They do things evil. They're not honest. How are they succeeding? God is saying, look, don't fret about that. The law of success applies to everyone, but you do things the right way, but the principles still apply to you, but work. And don't get tempted to go the scam route. Don't get tempted to do things in a dishonest way. Don't get tempted to cheat and steal and lie your way to success, right? So to wait is to have the patience to do things with integrity, even though it takes longer. To wait and not fret because of those who are doing things in the wrong way is to not become jealous or envious, or to have bitterness in your heart because it seems like everyone else who is doing things the wrong way is getting ahead faster. You are still actively working, but you are working in integrity and you are waiting on God, even though sometimes the right way may take longer. That is the definition of waiting and resting, not being inactive. All right, moving on. Um, let's read Proverbs 24. Proverbs 24, verse 30 says this. I would say that before we read this Proverbs, a person who a person, and I'm talking to Christians who read the word of God, and you think you're supposed to do nothing. You think that you're supposed to wait for a windfall. You think that you're supposed to wait for a miracle. You think that you're supposed to wait for something miraculously to happen without you taking any action, is a lack of understanding. And this is described in Proverbs 24, verse 30. It says, I went by the field of the slothful and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. I'll read it again. He's saying, I went by the field of the slothful, meaning I walked by the house or the property of a person who was slothful, and by the vineyard of a man that was void of understanding. And lo, it was grown all over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. So he's saying, I went by the property of someone who was slothful, who did not understand the principles, the law of success and work. And when I went past their house, the grass was overgrown. They had weeds and vines everywhere, so much so that the brick wall that was surrounding their property was so overgrown because they were not doing the work to upkeep the property, that the wall was broken down because it was overgrown with weeds. And he's pointing out that's what it looks like when you're walking past the property and the things of people who lack understanding, who are void of understanding, who don't understand work ethic. And he says, yet, he said, then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. So he's saying, I looked upon this land, this property that was not being properly cared for, and I received instruction. I received wisdom. And this is what he says in 33. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. He said, I looked at that and something came to me. I got a word. He said, I was walking past and I saw the house of a lazy man, a lazy person, and I got a word. And the word that I got was, those who say, let me sleep a little bit longer, let me do it tomorrow, let me put it off. Your poverty will come upon you the way contractions come upon a woman who is in childbirth. It's going to be suddenly and painful. Suddenly and painful, you wake up and it's like, oh God, how did I get here? I'm poor. Right? And before you know it, your want, it says, and thy want as an armed man. In other words, it's saying want will sneak up on you like someone who robs you sneaks up on you. And it comes from a lack of understanding. It comes from the way we apply these cliche statements, right? These statements that we apply out of context. Wait on the Lord. When you apply that in a way that makes you inactive, that's a lack of understanding. You're putting too much on you. When you apply that in a way that makes you feel guilty for being persistent and for being diligent, that makes you inactive. That puts you in a place of not doing. And that lack of understanding causes poverty to come upon you the way contractions come upon a woman when she doesn't know when her water is going to break. It makes you find yourself wanting and needing things that you don't have, and it sneaks up on you the way a robber sneaks up on someone. That's what the lack of understanding does when it comes to these things that we tell each other that we live by within the Christian community. But God tells us this. Proverbs 26:14 is talking more so about being inactive. It says, as the door turns upon his hinges, so does the slothful upon his bed. The slothful hides his hand in his bosom. It grieves him to bring it again to his mouth. It's saying that the slothful, the lazy person, keeps their hands clenched, and it's painful for them to even feed themselves. That's how lazy, right? It says the sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. What does that mean? It's saying a person who is lazy is wiser. They can come up with the most clever, sophisticated, deep spiritual reasons why they are not taking action. They can come up with a wiser reason. Some people will watch this video and have some deep philosophical reason to justify being lazy, to justify not taking action. They can come up with a reason. The word says that Where is it? It says the sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than seven men that can render a reason. Saying that some people who don't want to take action, who want to pacify and justify why they're not taking action, they can make it more spiritual and more deep than seven men coming to reason, because they're going to come up with every reason why they can't take action. When you go back to 13, it says, the slothful man says, there is a lion in the way. A lion is in the streets. What is that saying? It's saying that a person who is lazy is always seeing danger as to why they can't go out and to be productive. So if it's saying a slothful man is saying there is a lion in the way, a lion in the streets, they're saying that this slothful, lazy person that says there's a lion out there, that's why I can't go out to the market and sell, because the lion is going to steal all my goods. What's your threat, or what's a threat you've heard other people talk about why they can't do something? Oh, I can't go out and do business right now because the market is terrible. Oh, I can't go out and do business right now because AI is taking over everything. Oh, I can't go out and start a business right now because of tariffs, because the tariffs are so high, it's going to spoil anything that I do. That is the equivalent of being a slothful person saying, I can't do it because there's a lion in the street or because there's a threat. And people will talk for hours and have these deep philosophical conversations about why they're not taking action. And it's just someone trying to sound wise and sound arrogant, but they're pacifying themselves. And the only thing that's happening is you're not taking action, and poverty is going to sneak up on you like a woman in childbirth when her water breaks, and you're going to look up and you're poor, and you're going to look up and you want to need things because you did not take action. Right? So, what are we supposed to do? Proverbs 6 tells us to look at the ants and observe the way the ant is. That's the way we're supposed to be. Right? So, let's go to Proverbs 6. Proverbs 6:6 says, go to the ant, thou sluggard, and consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provides her meat in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you sleep, O sluggard? When will you arise out of your sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, so shall your poverty come as one that travail, and thy want as an armed man. It keeps saying the same thing over and over and over again. It's saying, go to the ant, oh, you lazy person, oh, you sluggard, oh, you person who doesn't get out of bed, oh, you person who doesn't get up and go. You go up and look at the ant and consider what the ant does and get some wisdom from the ant. And watch how the ant doesn't have a boss or someone cracking the whip or someone forcing her to go out and gather meat in the summer so that she has food in the fall, but she still goes out diligently and make sure that she gathers and that she's working so that she's taken care of. And again, it's the same thing. It's saying a little sleep, a little slumber, a little not doing. Poverty is coming for you. These cliche statements that are misapplied are the reason that Christians are poor. Stop applying these statements this way. I'm saying it with urgency and I'm saying it with love, because circling back to what I said in the beginning, the laws of success are no different than the laws of gravity. The laws and principles of success are no different than the laws and principles of gravity. They apply whether you believe them or not, whether you believe in God or not, whether you are Christian or not. The laws apply to you. You cannot tithe your way and skip the line, because Christians are more susceptible to manipulation because they're always looking for a shortcut, right? Not all Christians, but Christians who are looking for a shortcut. So let me put that caveat out there. But a lot of times, if you're lazy and you're Christian and you got those two things together, or if you have a misunderstanding, sometimes you're not even lazy. Sometimes it's just that misunderstanding of not knowing what wait on the Lord means. So some people listening have a great work ethic, right? But they just think that wait on the Lord means that you pray and you have to listen for what to do every step of the way. God gave you ingenuity, intellect, intelligence, wisdom, the ability to learn. You don't have to hear what to do every step of the way. And because you don't understand that, a lot of you are stuck because you won't make a move unless you hear God tell you to choose A or choose B, choose this bank, partner with this person. Listen, go use the ingenuity and the ingenuity and the wisdom and the knowledge that God has given you. If God wants to intervene and tell you something, he'll tap you on the shoulder and tell you or redirect you, even if you don't hear. But stop being so afraid to take action that you're not moving unless you hear some supernatural answer every step of the way. That's not the way it works. It's not the way the principle of success works, right? And that law works no matter what. Till the word tells you to study and show yourself approved, right? Second Timothy, if we go to Second Timothy, it says, study and show thyself approved. Second Timothy chapter 2, verse 15 says, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needs not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Now, this verse is talking about salvation, and it's talking about those who go out into ministry to teach other people about the path to salvation. So it's saying you want to study the word of God so that you can rightly divide the word of God so that you can lead other people to salvation, right? In addition to that, that verse applies not only to discipleship, it applies to everything in life. You need to study what it takes to be successful. Being Christian does not automatically make you successful in business. Being Christian does not automatically make you successful in whatever your endeavor is or whatever money is. You have to study, how do I be successful in business? How do I be successful in investment and trading? And you have to apply what you learn. Right? The word says our people perish. Hosea says our people perish for lack of knowledge. A lot of you are perishing away. A lot of people, there's a lot of gifts in graves, right? There's a lot of people who passed away who never fulfilled their purpose just because of lack of knowledge, just because they thought wait on the Lord meant to pray and be passive and not do anything. There's a lot of people who are wasting years of their youth and their life and their vitality while they can do it because people are telling them you're dependent too much on you. And because of that, they misunderstand it and they misapply it, and they're not doing what they can do under the misunderstanding that they're being arrogant or trying too hard, when that's not the way God sees it at all. The crazy thing about it is that a lot of times Christians have a misunderstanding that being tenacious, being disciplined, being persistent, working hard, being disciplined, doing as much as you can. A lot of times Christians have this limiting, self-sabotaging belief that somehow is a lack of faith. That's not, or that's not believing in God, as if hard work and being relentless is somehow proof that you don't have faith that God will do it. Well, let me present this to you. That's not a lack of faith. That's faith. Being persistent, being consistent, being relentless, showing up, having the work ethic of the ants, that is faith. Faith without works is dead. Those things are not working against God. Those things are not working against the belief that God will bless you. Those things are proof that you believe God will bless you. God made you to be persistent. God made you to be consistent. God made you to be diligent. God created you to be disciplined. God created you to do everything that you can do. God created you to be innovative. Those are tools, those are a gift from God. Those are not things working against faith. Those are a gift given to you from God to apply in faith. Those are things that you're supposed to embrace as gifts. Those are characteristics God placed in you so that you can create in the same nature in which He creates. God created you in His image to be just as genius and to be just as creative and to create as He did. So do everything that you can. Yes, work and balance, right? Get proper rest. Pray and ask God for guidance as you work and as you go. A dead end trials, tribulations, obstacles, that's not a sign that God is closing a door. That's a sign that you need to learn how to do it a different way. The reason that discipline, perseverance, consistency, the reason those things are necessary to be successful, God created the law of success. God created the principles of success. That's a law that's created by God. And the reason that the law of success requires you to be disciplined, focused, consistent, persistent, relentless, the reason the law of success requires those things is because God knows those things are necessary for you to have the character needed to manage the success. In order for you to be a person who is worthy of the success or who can manage the success, right? Who can be a good steward over the success, that process is necessary to build your character. So you can't pray away the need to build character because God implemented those things because he knows it's important for us to build character. So it doesn't make sense for you to pray to not have to go through the process of the learning and development that it takes in order for you to be a good steward over what God has entrusted to you or what he's trying to entrust to you if you would just go through the process. Because if you just go through the process, if you go through the process of being disciplined, of getting up, of doing the work, even when you feel sleepy, of following through, of learning how to manage people, learning how to build a team, learning how to manage money, learning how to reinvest in the business, learning how to solve problems. When you go through that process, it makes you qualified to manage and steward the gift and vision he has placed in you. So that it wouldn't be of your best interest to not have to go through the process. So stop trying to pray away the process. Stop trying to tithe away the process. Some people try to give money so that they get it back tenfold. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation. I'm not even going down that rabbit hole. But what I'm saying is, don't try to tithe your way into success as a way to circumvent the process of learning how to properly build a business. It just makes you susceptible to scams. It makes you susceptible to people who are money predators, right? Because they'll prey on that because you don't want to do the work, because you don't want to learn how to build a business. You don't want to learn how to market. You don't want to learn how to scale. You don't want to read the books. You don't want to take the courses. You don't want to get the mentorship. You don't want to learn. So you're like, you know what? I'm going to skip all of that and I'm just going to give 100 so that I get back 1,000. That's not the way a law of success, the law works. Because here's the thing, if you haven't gone through the process, and even if you do get back the 1,000 or the 10,000, you're not going to know how to manage it. You're just going to squander it and still end up broke. How many times have you seen that? Right? So don't be a victim of the Christian cliches and the limiting mindsets that we kind of have embraced as a community, right? Understand and apply things in context and wisdom. Wait on the Lord. That does not mean to passively wait and not do anything. Waiting on the Lord means you do everything God made you capable of as you wait for the outcome to surface that you are working towards. That's what that means. That's the proper use of that. You're depending too much on you. Stop saying that without proper context. What I'm saying is stop telling people that without telling them what to do. If you see someone who's overworking, if you see someone who is working out of balance, if you see someone who's putting too much pressure on themselves, it's fine and it's okay to call that out, right? But what you don't want to do is don't tell someone you're depending too much on you and then not tell them how to properly continue to pursue the goal. If you see that someone is depending too much on themselves, don't just say you're depending too much on you and stop there, right? Say, hey, you may be putting too much pressure on yourself. You're depending too much on you. You have to follow that up with, so remember, God is in control. God is the source of all knowledge and wisdom. Pray to God in terms of how to succeed at this. Calm down. Don't be stressed out, and try other ways to do it. That's the complete sentence for that. That's the complete, right? So if you see someone depending too much on you, don't just stop at you're dependent too much on you and then have someone stop and now they're not moving. The correction, you're dependent too much on you. So, hey, remember, God's got you. Take a breath, breathe. Let's look at the other 50 other ways that you can pursue this and still get an outcome. Maybe reach out to a mentor, maybe read another book, maybe take a course, maybe take a training, maybe try something you haven't thought of before. Keep moving. That's the way you address yourself or someone else who you think is putting too much pressure on themselves. But you don't give advice in a way that suggests they should just stop, because that's not what it is, right? I hope that you apply this. So what is the principle of success, right? What is the law of success? Here's the thing. These are the things you have to learn. It says study and show yourself approved. If you are trying to succeed in business, if you are trying to grow a nonprofit, if you're trying to do anything, there are certain things you have to know. Here are some of them. You have to understand supply and demand. Study and show yourself approved. Do you understand how to create a product or a service that people actually want? Do you know how to position that product? Do you know how to effectively market? Do you know how to effectively sell? You need to know how to put systems in place so that your business is running on autopilot. You need to learn how to put systems in place, automation systems. You need to know how to scale a business. You need to understand money management. You need to understand how to manage your profit, how to reinvest in a business, how to build a team, right? How to properly form the business, how to delegate tasks. These are principles of success for business, right? These things don't go away because you're Christian. You need to understand that, and these are things you have to implement. You can't just pray away that, right? You need to understand it, or you need to either get people on your team who understand it. You need to outsource it. You need to bring in mentors. Make sure your mentors are people who have succeeded in what you're trying to do. That's a key. That's a key. Just because someone is Christian doesn't mean they can be a mentor if they haven't succeeded in what you're trying to do. If you're trying to figure out how to scale your business, go to someone who has successfully scaled their business. If you're trying to figure out how to automate so that you can step away and not have to be a part of the process, yeah, you can pray and ask God who to go to, but you got to go to somebody, right? These things, these are the things, these are the principles, the laws of success that will work for you, whether you're Christian or not. And the fact that you're not digging into these is the reason why you're not succeeding, even though you're Christian. Because if you're Christian and you're running a business and you don't know how to market, and you keep putting out ads and the ads don't get any response, if your response is to pray and to sit on the bed and not do anything, that's not the answer. If you don't know how to market, you need to pray, and after you pray, you need to implement other marketing strategies. You need to pick up a marketing book and learn how to market. You need to look at what people clicked on, what they didn't click on, and why. You need to look at other people who succeeded in that space and what do their ads look like and how do they market and what colors do they use and what time of day do they post. All of that stuff, you're not exempt from that because you're Christian. But typically, what happens too much is a Christian will put out an ad, the ad doesn't perform. They'll say it's spiritual. They'll over spiritualize it and say, well, God must not want me to do this. God must be closing this door. God must be leading me in another direction. Right. And then they get frustrated because they keep putting out ads and the ads don't convert. Then they express the frustration to their family. And the family responds with, you're just putting too much on you. You got to let go and let God. So now you run this vicious cycle of going back, and now you got a day in the prayer closet, a day when you're fasting, when really you need to pick up a marketing book or you need to take a marketing course. Perish for the lack of understanding. Study and show yourself approved. You see the difference? That's the stuff that keeps Christians poor. The thought of, hey, maybe my marketing campaign isn't effective doesn't even cross your mind. You've already over spiritualized it and made it into God doesn't want me to do it. No, you just suck at marketing. Take a marketing course. Hire a marketing firm. That's more likely the answer, right? Prayer and then faith without works. So I'm not saying not to pray, but if you pray and if you keep moving, that answer will be revealed to you. Pray and God will guide you towards the right marketing strategy, but you can't just pray and sit on your hands. Faith without works is dead, right? Or you have Christian businesses where they are successful. Maybe they're good at marketing, but every time they build a business, it collapsed. That was me, right? I'm good at marketing. But for me, every time I would build a business, it would collapse. It would fold in on me because I wasn't good at building systems and I was not good at building a team. So because of my church background and what I was taught, I came to the conclusion that, oh, God must not want me to do this. That's literally what I said to myself. I said, God must be leading me in a different direction. So I quit the business and I just kept starting different businesses, and the same thing would happen. They would be successful, then they would implode. They would be successful, they would be implode. And I'm like, the advice around me was always, you're depending too much on you. That's not helpful. The advice around me was always, well, when God closes one door, he opens another. He must be redirecting you. None of that was true. I sucked at systems. I did not know how to build a proper system. That's the reason the businesses were failing. But the Christian community didn't even lead me towards even a path of exploration to discover that. It took me years later to realize, no, you just suck at systems. You don't know how to build a system so that the business runs smoothly. You don't know how to build automation systems. That was the truth. It wasn't because God didn't want me to succeed at the businesses that I closed. I sucked at systems. So I'm saying this from a place of like not pointing a finger. I'm saying this from a place of personal experience and knowing the detriment of Christian cliches and commonly embraced Christian mindsets where the business acumen just isn't there. Right. If you look around, if you look at the businesses that do succeed, some of them are evil. Some of them have evil agendas. Some of them, you know, put more money towards things that are not for the good of humankind, and they are still ultra successful. Why is that? Because the law of success applies to everyone, whether you're Christian or not. The law of success is the same. So Christians, stop being overly spiritual so that your businesses can stand neck and neck with other huge businesses that are applying the principles. The greatest atrocity is that Christians are over spiritualizing what it takes to be successful. And we have the businesses, we have the nonprofits, we have the movements that are needed to move the world. But because we don't apply the principles of success, our businesses don't really scale to other businesses because other businesses don't have the limiting beliefs that we have made spiritual. They just follow the laws. Just think about the law of gravity. Look, the law of gravity applies to you whether you're Christian or not, right? But if you accept the law of gravity for what it is, those who accept the law of gravity, who study the law of gravity, who understand that it exists, that's why we can go to the moon. That's why airplanes were invented. That's why moon boots, gravity boots were invented, because people who embrace the laws can do great things operating within the laws. Right. So people who embrace the law of success can achieve great things when they embrace the law of success. People who don't, you don't make it not true just because you don't believe it. You just underachieve. You don't tap into what's possible. Right. So I pray that this Sunday school has freed you from limiting beliefs. Any belief that makes you believe that you should not be doing everything in your power is a limiting belief. Any belief that's telling you you should stop is a limiting belief. Any belief that's telling you that you should not do everything God has made you capable of doing to achieve the goal, anything telling you you should stop short, anything I didn't cover in this video, we can summarize it to this. If it's telling you to not use all of your intellect, all of the resources around you, if it's telling you, if you have a belief or an understanding that's telling you to stop short of what you are building, it is a lie. It is a misunderstanding, right? Do you pray? Absolutely pray. Do you seek God for guidance? Absolutely. But you keep going the whole way. Stop waiting for a spiritual answer every step of the way. Yes, God does step in sometimes and he will give you spiritual answers. But a lot of the times you have the autonomy to make the decision. 90% of the time, 90% of the decisions that you're going to make are going to be within the guidelines of you knowing what would Jesus do? Is this ethical? Is this am I coming from the right place? Is my motive right? Most of the time, if that's yes, just go. You don't have to hear a supernatural thunder clap and boom and voice from God for every single step. When God wants to do that, he'll step in and you'll know. And then you pivot, you go that way, and then you keep going and you keep making decisions. So we need you. We need your business. We need you to succeed. We need you to stop. We need you to take the handcuffs off of yourself. We need you to stop feeling as if you're putting too much on you. That's not true, right? We need you to work in balance. If you are putting too much on you, meaning that if you have lost sight of the fact that it's God who empowers you, we need you to get back around to the truth. We need you to let go. We need you to de-stress. We need you to know that God is empowering you, and we need you to keep trying other solutions. We need you to keep trying until you get it. We need you. We need whatever it is God placed on your heart to do. So keep going. Learn the principles of success. You cannot tithe your way to skip the line. You cannot pray to skip the line. God created the line. He created the process because he knows it's necessary for you, right? So keep going, go through the process, learn the law of success, learn the principles of success. Everything got listed with supply and demand, how to market, how to sell, how to reinvest in the business. All of those things. Learn everything you need to learn. Keep going. Surround yourself around the right mentors. Keep going, because that is what is necessary for you to succeed. That's those things are necessary in order for you to reach your fullest potential. Persistence is a requirement. Consistency is a requirement. Discipline is a requirement. Showing up even when you are tired is a requirement. Being relentless is a requirement. Learning and studying to show yourself approved is a requirement. Surrounding yourself around good counsel and people who have succeeded and what you have succeeded in is a requirement. Whether you know them personally or you sign up for a course, whatever, it's a requirement. Accept the requirements. Move within the requirements and be everything God has created you to be. Until next Sunday, I love you so much. Be blessed.